Secretary of State Marco Rubio's visit. I suppose Washington wanted to show that it was not very pleased with what government of India did. Trump says that Indo-American relations have never been closer. Well, it's nice to hear all those words. But words should be followed by action. Has not America under Trump distanced itself, traveled far away from the founding principles? Prime Minister Modi's tour, very successful tour, starting with UAE. Young journalist Hele, she asked a question to Prime Minister Modi, screamed out the question. I don't know whether that was a correct thing, but I would say that perhaps there was a better way of responding to the question. This war was most unnecessary. It is doing a lot of harm to all of us, and therefore it should end not tomorrow but yesterday. And does it matter much who is mediating? So let us wish success to Pakistan. Hello, dear viewers of SW News. Once again, I am privileged to be with you. Many things have happened during the week, but let us focus on a few. One, of course, is Secretary of State Marco Rubio's visit. He started with a visit to Mother Teresa's institution in Kolkata, which was significant in the context of the problems that Mother Teresa's Missionaries of Charity encountered some time back when Government of India suspended their FCRA, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, clearance. So from that point of view, I suppose Washington wanted to show that it was not very pleased with what Government of India did. So that was good. But let's dig deeper. The same administration suspended, or rather abolished, AID, US Agency for International Development. AID, that was started in 1961. And it has been doing great work since then. In fact, between 2001 and 2021, AID saved more than, one calculation is 4.1 to 4.7 million lives per annum, the AID saved. And that included children, 1.2 to 1.7 million children. Eisenhower started it. Now, our question is, what would Mother Teresa say about abolition of USAID by President Trump? Now, Marco Rubio, with his wife, went to Taj Mahal also. Well, let us hope that he will report to President Trump that Iranian architects and craftsmen played a big role in constructing the Taj Mahal, that it was done during the time of Shah Jahan, the emperor, 1593, 1631. Well, Mayflower landed in Plymouth in the year 1607. That is when Shah Jahan was emperor. Now, among the substantive matters, bilateral trade deal with the United States. We do not know the exact outcome, but Secretary Rubio has said that it is going to be finalized soon. But what I noticed was that while addressing the embassy officials in Delhi, that is American and Indian, Marco Rubio urged them to work for Mission 500 billion. Now, what is Mission 500 billion according to him? According to him, between now and 2030, India should have imported from the United States goods worth $500 billion. See, the problem with the United States led by Trump is that they have got a very peculiar idea of foreign trade. America wants to have a trade surplus with every country. Of course, America doesn't need it, but they think they should have it. Now, another part of the message brought by Marco Rubio was that President Trump loves India. He loves Prime Minister Modi. Well, and Trump says that Indo-American relations have never been closer. Well, it's nice to hear all those words. But, words should be followed by action. And I was fascinated when, at Bharat Mandap, there was celebration, the 250 years of America's independence. But, celebration should go with introspection. Has not America under Trump distanced itself, traveled far away from the founding principles? Is America a self-correcting democracy? Now, at the press conference yesterday, I think, an Indian journalist reminded Marco Rubio that Trump had once referred to India as a hellhole, Hellhole. Now, Marco Rubio avoided the question. That is correct. What else can you do? But now, what I want to share with you, dear listeners, is that it was a planted question. Planted by whom? By the establishment, which is good. Now, let's say a word about Quad. Now, the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting is still on, so let us not prejudge. But we have a question. President Trump, while in Beijing, spoke about a G2 between China and the United States. Now, if President Trump is serious about the G2, it follows that there is no scope for Quad. In fact, my personal assessment is that Quad is dying. But that doesn't mean there will not be more meetings about Quad. There can be more declarations. But that is a different matter. Now let me share something with you. When Biden was president, there was some concern in India and in other Quad countries outside America, that is Japan and Australia, about Quad's future. And the US Embassy in Delhi did a background briefing for senior journalists. And the gist was that, well, Quad is like the ICRC, International Committee of the Red Cross. Wherever there is distress, wherever there is, tsunami, Quad can and should be active. Now, the way the media work in India, none of them reported that. Okay. Now let's move on to Iran and Trump. One day, President Trump says he's close to a deal. Next day, he says he's in no hurry. And the latest we hear is that American Central Command attacked some Iranian ships in Bandar Abbas. Well, let me put it this way. Whenever diplomatic negotiations approach a successful culmination, well, President Trump starts military action. He did that in June last year. He did that in February this year. And now he is doing it again. He is facing a dilemma. On the one hand, because of the rising political costs and the looming midterm elections in November, when he might lose the majority in the Congress, there is the possibility of an impeachment. Well, frankly, I believe that there might be impeachment, but he won't be found guilty. Not because I'm not saying that he is not guilty, but because the Republicans will have enough votes to prevent that. Now, that is on the one hand, that Trump wants a settlement. But on the other hand, there is Netanyahu and also the Israeli lobby, very active. And Trump doesn't want to tell Netanyahu, stop it. He has some hesitation, some difficulty. Now, in this context, let's look at the charade of ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. 16th of April, 17th. Ceasefire was declared. But tell me, there has never been a day without firing since then. The Israeli Defense Forces have so far killed 400 Lebanese. In fact, since 2nd of March, Israel has killed 3,000 Lebanese. So, when we speak of a ceasefire involving Israel, well, we have to look for the meaning of ceasefire outside the dictionary. Now, let's look at a workable agreement between Iran and the United States. 1. Washington should end the blockade, release in part at least the frozen funds of Iran, say 20 billion. 2. Simultaneously, Iran should restore the pre-28 February status of the Strait of Hormuz. Now, does it mean that Iran should not charge any administrative fee? That it should not regulate? No, it should regulate because the strait falls within the territorial waters of Iran and Oman. It is not, I repeat, it is not an international waterway as Secretary of State Marco Rubio and others have been saying. Then, to go back to the workable arrangement, after that has taken place, the two sides should be at the table on the nuclear question. Now here, Trump is facing a dilemma. We all remember and we all know that the 2015 nuclear deal, JCPOA, Joint Common Plan of Action, finalized when Obama was president, did ensure that Iran will never make a nuclear bomb. Why? Because IAEA had full access to monitor Iran's nuclear activities. Now, Trump walked out of it, or rather, he killed the 2015 nuclear deal. Now, that reminds me of Shakespeare, Macbeth, who killed Banquo for no good reason. And then what happened? In fact, after killing him, Trump, in fact, he sent the murderers in the morning to kill him. And then, of course, in the evening, there was a banquet, and Macbeth had invited Banquo also. And he told those who were there that you had invited Banquo and he was expected any moment. Well, then what happened? The murderers come and report to Macbeth what happened. Macbeth comes back, and as he was about to sit on the chair for the host, oh goodness, Banquo's ghost was sitting there. And Macbeth got so worked up. You see? So this is what is happening. The 2015 nuclear deal ghost is haunting the corridors of the White House. But let me make it clear. Diplomacy can find words to give the impression that Trump has got a better deal. It is possible. But then there is another problem. Trump has sidelined professional diplomacy. So what do you do? Now, we should look at another serious matter. Trump's declining cognitive abilities. The other day, he put out a post saying that he had spoken to President of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. Well, MBS is Crown Prince. Or you can say he is Prime Minister. But Saudi Arabia has no president. And the American president should know that. Okay. Second instance, he put out a post saying that it is necessary to expand the Abraham Accords and that Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey should join. Well, Egypt has an embassy in Israel, and Israel has an embassy in Egypt for how many years? And similarly, Turkey too has a resident Israeli embassy, and the other way around. So why did President Trump include Egypt and Turkey in that? Of course, he was right. Qatar does not have diplomatic relations with Israel. So, his mind is a little mixed up. And, for the United States president, cognitive abilities at a certain level, well, it's important. It is, what shall I say, absolutely essential. Now, as we said earlier, it is the 250th year. Now, let's move on. Prime Minister Modi's tour. Very successful tour, starting with UAE, ending with melodious encounter in Italy. That's all very well. But, there was a little bit of a hitch in Netherlands because before the dinner, the Prime Minister of Netherlands, Rob Jetten, he told his media, Netherlands media, about concerns about developments in India. That was, what shall I say, a reference to media freedom, human rights, and all that. And a journalist by name Ashwini Nandram, he raised questions when the MEA held a press conference. And MEA's reply was, such questions arose out of lack of understanding. Well, I'm not sure that is the best answer. And India's ranking in World Press Freedom Index is 157 out of 180. Okay, now the same problem, substantial manner. That young journalist, Hele, she asked a question to Prime Minister Modi after the two prime ministers had given their joint statement. So what happened is that after the joint statement was given, two or three Norwegian journalists told their prime minister, "Sir, I have a question. Sir, I have a question." So the Norwegian prime minister was wondering how to respond to that. But then Prime Minister Modi started walking out. So the Prime Minister of Norway, being a good host, he walked along with Prime Minister Modi, that is, properly saw him off, and he came back and answered the questions from the media. But as Prime Minister Modi started walking, a young journalist, Hele, she raised a question, and she screamed out the question. I don't know whether that was a correct thing, because when a prime minister is walking, you don't ask a question. Anyway, then the MEA invited that journalist, and she raised the question, and we all know what response was given. I would say that perhaps there was a better way of responding to the question, that attention could have been drawn to the following facts. One, that India is a self-correcting democracy. Human rights violations do happen. But then, is there any country where they do not happen? And how can any government, certainly government of India control the words and deeds of more than 1400 or 1450 million human beings? So what we have to understand is that violations occur in India as well as elsewhere. The question is, what happens next? And the answer is clear. The civil society, the media, and the authorities concerned take action. In short, India is a self-correcting democracy. And of course, in one or two instances where the judiciary had intervened to correct the executive, could have been specific instances, could have been mentioned. Now, in this context, I want to share a story with you. During the emergency, I was Under Secretary, MEA. There was an interministerial meeting to discuss the progress made during the emergency. I suppose it was a monthly meeting. So a representative from the Home Ministry, the guy was from the Indian Police Service, he said that we have this month arrested more people. The increase in the number of arrests is 40%. So according to him, that showed progress. Now, when it was my turn, I said that criticism by the international media continue, but we have been talking to the editors and opinion makers and trying to let them know that, what their criticism is not always founded on facts. But we can't say that we have had full success. It is a work under progress. And we have to be patient. And we cannot expect the foreign media not to criticize us, because it is their duty to criticize when they find something is wrong. But, we have to handle it carefully. So that is what I said. Well, everybody listened, but some people were a little taken aback. I had just come back from Vienna. Anyway, now let us take a brief look at Pakistan's mediation. It is interesting that Marco Rubio should say that India did not raise the question about Pakistan's mediation. Well, the question is, why should India raise it at all? My view is that this war was most unnecessary. It is doing a lot of harm to all of us, and therefore it should end not tomorrow but yesterday. And does it matter much who is mediating? So let us wish success to Pakistan, and let us look for an early end to this war rather than get worked up. Oh, Pakistan is doing it. Incidentally, I should add that Pakistani's Prime Minister was in China the other day. So let me put it this way. Diplomacy often requires dancing with two partners at the same time. Well, Pakistan is good at it. Now, India's economy. Well, we are in serious trouble. Foreign portfolio investor, they have taken out 1,91,969 crores in 2026 so far. Okay? And the RBI also has come out with figures. Now, one of the reasons, of course, is the delay in US-India trade deal. And the rupee is falling. And, even Indians are investing abroad. So, there is need for introspection and course correction. And let me put it this way. There is a difference between winning the election and running the country. The qualities required for winning the election are not the same for running the country. Let me leave it at that. And before ending, let me say a word about the Delhi Gymkhana Club, established in 1913 as the Imperial Club. Now, people will tell you about its heritage and all that. But I just want to mention that Mahatma Gandhi met Lord Irving in 1931 at the Gymkhana Club. And thus arose the Gandhi-Irvin Pact, which marked the end of the civil disobedience movement by Mahatma Gandhi and led to the Round Table Conference. Now, the argument given for taking over the property is national security, and that PM's residence is very close. Now, let's get the facts right. The Gymkhana Club has been there since 1913, and the PM's residence came there, I think, during Rajiv Gandhi's time. Now, at that time, it was said that being close to Gymkhana Club added to the security of the PM's residence. So what has changed? Okay. Now, a little bit of history. I was on the management committee of the Gymkhana Club years ago. See, there was a problem with green card holders. That is, if you are a member, your child can get a green card if you apply when your child attains 21 years. And then there is a cutoff age before which you should apply. So many people had failed to apply before that cutoff age. And then what we did, the managing committee where I was, we said you can apply, but we will charge you a fine. So that worked for a while, and so many got admitted as green card members. But then another committee changed that decision, which is wrong, because if there are 10 people waiting, and if we admitted 7 people based on a certain criterion, then you cannot deny it to the 8th and 9th and 10th. That's not administration. Then they went to the court. Then so many other accusations arose, a long waiting period, money taken as advance, 1.5 lakhs from civil servants and more from others, and this and that, and mismanagement. And the government appointed a management committee, and so they have been running it. Then there was an AGM, and we didn't pass the accounts and all that. Now, we don't know why the government had this national security concern all of a sudden. But what we have to watch is there a land mafia behind it? The land mafia can be very powerful because a lot of land recent years have been taken over by the government, land belonging to the military, land belonging to the railways, and land belonging to the postal service. And by and large, they have been given to private land developers. So that's a very powerful lobby. And the question is whether the Indian democratic system, including the Supreme Court, can stand its ground. Well, there let me stop, dear friends. See you soon next week.